Lionel Messi has more trophies than any player in history. 8 Ballon d'Ors, a World Cup, Nike, Adidas, Pepsi, mega deals, careful smiles, on message every time. But he will never be Diego Maradona. Maradona scored with his hand and dared the world to prove it. He called out American imperialism to Bush's face. He tattooed Che Guevara on his arm and Fidel Castro on his leg. He snorted his way through a World Cup and still, somehow, made an entire country believe in God again. This is why Messi can never be Maradona. To understand Maradona, you have to start in the mud. Villa Fiorito, the 1960s, a shanty town on the southern edge of Buenos Aires. A shack with no running water and no electricity, 8 kids, and 1 ball. Diego joked later that he grew up in a gated community, gated away from water, light, and telephones. In 1971, a television crew filmed a 10-year-old with the ball glued to his feet, and the boy told them his dream: to play in a World Cup. Football was never a career plan. It was the only door out. Messi's escape looked very different. At 10, doctors in Rosario found his body wasn't producing enough growth hormone. The treatment cost around $1,000 a month, money his family didn't have. Barcelona had it. They flew him across the ocean at 13 and wrote his first contract on a paper napkin. Diego was built by hunger. Leo was built by a system. By 1982, Maradona was the most expensive footballer on the planet. A world record £5 million took him to Barcelona. And Barcelona broke him. Hepatitis. Then a tackle that shattered his ankle. Then a cup final brawl in front of the King of Spain. So in 1984, he broke the transfer record again and chose Napoli. Understand what that meant. Naples was mocked as the sewer of Italy. When Napoli traveled north, the banners read, "Welcome to Italy and wash yourselves." Nobody chose Naples. 75,000 people packed the San Paolo just to watch him hold up a shirt. 3 years later, Napoli were champions of Italy, the first title the southern mainland ever won, the first in the club's 60-year history. The city threw a party that lasted a week and painted his face on its walls. Messi joined the greatest team on earth and made it even greater. Wonderful. But nobody paints your face on a wall for that. Maradona took the city everyone spat on and dragged it to the top of Italy. June 22, 1986. The Azteca. Argentina versus England in a World Cup quarter-final, 4 years after the two countries fought a war over the Falklands. Maradona wrote it down himself. We knew they had killed a lot of Argentine boys there, and this was revenge. Minute 51. He rises next to the goalkeeper and punches the ball into the net. A crime committed in front of the whole world, and he walked away calling it the hand of God. Minute 55. He collects the ball in his own half and runs 60 meters through 5 Englishmen, then rounds the keeper. The goal of the century. The dirtiest goal in World Cup history and the greatest goal in World Cup history. 4 minutes apart, same man, same match, against the country that won the war. That is not a highlight reel. That is a national wound healed by a sinner. Messi's masterpiece came in 2022, and it was flawless. But when he lifted his World Cup, they dressed him in the host emir's robe first. Even at his coronation, somebody else set the dress code. And Maradona never learned to behave. He went to Cuba and called Fidel Castro his second father. Che on his arm, Fidel on his leg. You've seen the tattoos. In 2005, when George Bush came to Argentina for a summit, Diego boarded the protest train, stood beside Hugo Chavez in front of a stadium of demonstrators wearing a shirt that said, "Stop Bush," and called the President of the United States human garbage. He spent decades spitting at FIFA's corruption. He kept saying the things that get sponsors cancelled, which is why he barely had any. Now try to remember one dangerous thing Messi has ever said. 1. The safest man in sport, an ambassador for Saudi tourism, a smile for every camera, a drafted statement for every controversy. Maradona had no filter and no handler who could hold him. That wasn't his flaw. That was the whole point of him. Of course, the fire burned in every direction. In Naples, the Camorra owned the nights, and Diego was their favorite guest. The cocaine he first met in Barcelona became a full addiction. In March 1991, he failed a doping test and was banned for 15 months. A month later, cameras filmed the greatest footballer alive being led out of a Buenos Aires apartment under arrest. In 1994, he clawed his way back for one last World Cup. Scored, screamed into the camera, and then a nurse walked onto the pitch, took him by the hand, and led him away to a drug test he would fail. Days later, in tears, he said, "They cut off my legs." The fall was long, public, and nearly fatal more than once. And here is the part nobody can explain. Naples never took the murals down. Because you don't cancel a god. In 1998, on his birthday, 3 fans in Rosario founded a church, the Iglesia Maradoniana. Real weddings, real baptisms, and by some counts over 100,000 members in dozens of countries, counting the years from Diego's birth. They write God's name as D10S, Dios, with the 10 inside. On November 25th, 2020, 4 years to the day after Fidel Castro, Maradona's heart gave out. Argentina declared 3 days of national mourning, and hundreds of thousands filed past his coffin in the presidential palace. 4 days later, Messi scored for Barcelona, pulled off his shirt, and revealed what he was wearing underneath. Maradona's actual Newell's Old Boys number 10. The greatest player of all time, dressed in the relics of his god. 2 years on, Messi finally won his World Cup, in a stadium wallpapered with Diego's face, and wrote that night that the trophy also belonged to Diego, who encouraged us from heaven. So yes, Messi is the greatest footballer who ever lived. The numbers closed that debate years ago. But Maradona was never just a footballer. He was a wound, a rebellion, a sin, and a resurrection. You can win every trophy on earth. You cannot win a myth. And that is why Lionel Messi, the greatest of all time, can never beat Diego Maradona.